Lena had just finished her last walk of the day with Baxter, a golden retriever with a habit of tugging toward every squirrel in the park. She'd been working as a dog walker for nearly 3 years now, juggling odd jobs to make rent on her tiny apartment. Ethan Cole, Baxter's owner, was one of her wealthiest clients, the kind of man who lived in a glass-walled penthouse, drove sleek black cars, and appeared in magazine covers she'd seen while waiting in line at the grocery store. She had never spoken to him for more than a polite hello when dropping off Baxter, so when she rang the doorbell and Ethan himself opened the door, without his usual assistant hovering nearby, she felt a flicker of surprise. His crisp navy suit looked freshly tailored, his cufflinks catching the hallway light. "Lena," he said, his tone warm but deliberate, "I need to ask you something unusual." Her first thought was that something was wrong with Baxter. But instead, he continued, "I have an important business dinner tonight. I'd like you to come with me." She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "Me? You mean, as in, tonight? But she glanced down at her worn sneakers, faded jeans, and a hoodie sprinkled with Baxter's dog hair. "Yes, you," he said with a faint smile, as though her hesitation amused him. "Don't worry about the clothes, I'll arrange something. I just need you there." The words hung in the air. Lena's mind spun. She had no experience with high-profile dinners, no reason to be in a room full of millionaires. And yet, Ethan's steady gaze carried no trace of mockery. After a pause, she nodded slowly. "All right, but I don't understand why." "You will," he replied simply. "Trust me." She left with Baxter trotting at her side, her heart pounding in a rhythm she couldn't quite name, equal parts curiosity, anxiety, and a strange thrill she couldn't shake. Friends, if this story touches your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more heartfelt tales. 2 hours later, Lena found herself stepping out of a sleek black town car in front of one of the city's most prestigious hotels. The building's marble pillars soared toward the night sky, its golden light spilling across the pavement like a promise of wealth and exclusivity. The doorman in a crisp uniform gave Ethan a respectful nod, then glanced briefly at Lena with polite curiosity before opening the door. She followed Ethan through a revolving glass entrance, and her breath caught. The lobby looked like something from a movie. Towering crystal chandeliers dripped light over polished marble floors, and the air smelled faintly of jasmine and expensive cologne. A pianist played softly in the corner, his notes weaving through the hum of polite conversation. Ethan walked with effortless confidence, his stride measured, his presence commanding attention without a word. Lena, in the elegant midnight blue dress his assistant had rushed to her apartment an hour earlier, did her best to match his pace. But even with the beautiful gown and borrowed heels, she felt the weight of every glance that landed on her. The maitre d' led them to a private dining hall shimmering with candlelight and hushed voices. Around a long mahogany table sat men and women in tailored suits and glittering jewelry, the city's power players. Their conversations paused the moment Ethan entered, eyes shifting from him to the unfamiliar woman at his side. Lena caught fragments of whispers. Who is she? Not the usual type. A woman in diamonds gave her a once-over, her smile polite but eyes sharp, as if dissecting every thread of Lena's dress. Ethan didn't seem to notice, or perhaps he didn't care. He pulled out a chair for Lena as though she belonged there as much as anyone else. She sat, forcing herself to hold her head high despite the swirl of doubt tightening in her chest. In that moment, she realized this wasn't just a dinner. It was a test, one she didn't yet understand. The first half hour of the dinner felt like a balancing act on a tightrope. The table was a theater of perfectly measured laughs, name-dropping, and subtle jabs disguised as compliments. Waiters moved like shadows, refilling wine glasses without a sound. Lena sat quietly, smiling when appropriate, hoping her silence would make her invisible. But invisibility wasn't in the cards. Across from her sat a man in an immaculate charcoal suit, his hair slicked back with precision. His cufflinks gleamed with the kind of arrogance money buys. Midway through a conversation about overseas investments, his eyes flicked to Lena. "And who might you be?" he asked, his voice coated with a false charm that didn't hide the undertone of condescension. "Ethan's new secretary, or perhaps, the entertainment for the evening." The table chuckled, the sound polite but laced with curiosity. Lena felt heat creep up her neck. Every instinct told her to smile awkwardly and let it pass. But something in Ethan's calm expression, the way he didn't step in to rescue her, made her pause. She leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. "Neither," she said, offering a small smile. But I am Baxter's favorite person in the world. Baxter. The man repeated, puzzled. Ethan's dog, she explained, then launched into a short, vivid story about how Baxter once refused to move during a walk until she noticed his paw was caught in a sidewalk grate. She described how Ethan had rushed from a meeting to help, how he'd carried the dog all the way home without a second thought. Her words landed differently than she expected. The smirks softened. A few guests chuckled genuinely at the image of the powerful Ethan Cole carrying a muddy retriever through city streets. More importantly, they glanced at him with newfound respect, seeing a side of him his boardroom victories never revealed. The man in the charcoal suit raised his glass toward her. Well, Baxter clearly has good taste. For the first time that night, Lena felt the balance shift. The room didn't feel quite so hostile anymore. The evening's tone had shifted, but tension still simmered beneath the surface. After dessert was served, a delicate creme brulee that Lena barely touched, the conversation turned toward the reason everyone was here, a multi-million-dollar real estate deal. Ethan's company was in final talks with two powerful investors seated across the table. The discussion was polite but strained, each side circling the other like chess players guarding their next move. Numbers were quoted, terms debated, but Lena could hear the undertone, doubt. The deal was teetering on the edge. As she sipped her water, her mind wandered, recalling snippets of phone calls she'd overheard while walking Baxter. Ethan had been speaking to his legal team one afternoon, mentioning something about zoning changes in a riverfront setback that could derail part of the project if overlooked. Now, she heard one of the investors confidently assure the table that environmental impact wouldn't be an issue. Something in his certainty didn't sit right. Without thinking, Lena spoke up. Sorry, she began softly, feeling every eye turned toward her. But, isn't there a new zoning requirement for that riverfront area? One that could affect the entire eastern side of the property. Silence. The investors exchanged a glance. One of them frowned. That was resolved, he said quickly, though his tone had lost some of its edge. Ethan's expression was unreadable, but she saw the faintest curve of a smile tug at his mouth. Actually, he said, picking up from her comment, it hasn't been resolved. And if we don't address it now, it could cost millions later. The discussion exploded with fresh energy, papers shuffled, phones came out, assistants began searching for confirmation. Lena sat back, her heart pounding, wondering if she'd just overstepped. But within minutes, it became clear, her question had exposed a flaw no one else had dared to mention, forcing a renegotiation in Ethan's favor. Ethan caught her eye, and in that silent exchange, she understood, this was exactly why he'd brought her. By the time the dinner ended, the atmosphere around the table had completely transformed. The investors who had arrived with guarded smiles were now leaning forward, speaking with enthusiasm, their earlier skepticism replaced by genuine interest. Ethan's company had secured better terms than he'd expected, and Lena's unexpected intervention had been the catalyst. As they rose from the table, the same people who had eyed her with quiet judgment at the beginning of the night were now eager to shake her hand. Sharp observation, one of the older executives said, his voice tinged with admiration. Another woman, the one in diamonds who had scanned Lena from head to toe earlier, offered a warm smile and remarked, "You've got a good head on your shoulders." That's rare. Lena accepted their compliments politely, still half in disbelief. She hadn't come here to impress anyone. She had simply spoken up because she couldn't ignore what she knew. Outside, the city air was cool, the streets alive with the hum of traffic and distant laughter. The chauffeur opened the car door, but Ethan paused before getting in, turning to her. "You know," he said, his tone quieter now, "most people in that room would have played it safe." Smiled, nodded, and said nothing. "I wasn't trying to be brave," she admitted with a shrug. "I just thought, if I noticed something important, I should say it." "That's exactly why I asked you to come," Ethan replied. "I didn't need another business mind tonight, I needed someone genuine. Someone who sees things the rest of us overlook." Lena felt warmth bloom in her chest, the kind that comes from being truly seen. As the car pulled away, she looked out at the glittering skyline. The night had started as a confusing, nerve-wracking invitation. It was ending with a quiet certainty that something in her life had shifted. She didn't know where this would lead, but one thing was clear, she would never again think of herself as just a dog walker. If this story moved you, please share it, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more stories of love, redemption, and hope.